staff would have forgiven you.
I had lots of people stop by my office.
I bet they did.
All right.
All right, good morning. The meeting started. We start with Glenn.
All right. Just a couple of quick updates on things. Christian Ridge Road is progressing. We met yesterday with RF Jordan and the engineers. They hope to be doing more paving next week. And they are on schedule to finish up in the second week of September. There will be a complete closure except for local traffic next Tuesday and possibly Wednesday. It's a safety issue. They're going to be working at the Bucksport end, replacing subsurface drainage, and they need to have they're going to be in the roadway, and it's just a matter of safety. So hopefully with the full closure they can get it all done Tuesday so it won't interrupt Wednesday, but there's a possibility for Wednesday if they run into problems. We had a portion of State Street, portion of Water Street, and a portion of East Main Street at the Upper Light ground down, and we're hopeful that they'll be back this coming week. We don't have an exact date yet to pave in those 3 sections of road, when we have that information, we will get it out to the public, which nights they're going to be paving.
It's much smoother.
Even ground
It
is much
seriously
smoother.
is.
I know.
It's, yeah, even having to just go
There's a
around.
new plan, let's
things.
just ground down all our roads.
Right.
That's right.
So progress there. Water Street Pump Station is coming along. They are a little bit behind schedule due to some change orders that have been made. But they are progressing, and hopefully we'll be able to make up some time. But it's mostly materials delays that's causing it to be delayed, but only a couple weeks, so not too bad. And we are preparing to send the High Street Pump Station out to bid, as well as the culvert project on Red Bridge Road. That's also being finalized and being prepared to send out to bid. So the road work and public works stuff continues. We were able to, early this week, I met with Ann and Larry. Sue was also included, and we were able to finalize commitment. And so our tax bills were completed yesterday electronically through Vision and Trio software glitches. We managed to struggle through them and get them sent to the printer yesterday. We're hopeful that the printer can have them in the mail by early to the middle of next week. But we're going to be doing some notification to the public to let them know that they're available here either online or they can come into City Hall and we can get them a copy if they want to take care of business before they get it in the mail. So hopeful that we can get that ball rolling and get that information out to our citizens. Our mill rate, when we set the commitment, was a little bit lower than what we had anticipated, so it was at 17.3. So we
What did we have it? 17.5, was that our estimate?
17.5 was our estimate, yeah.
That's good.
Came in at
Did
17.3, and that gave us overlay enough to take care of, make sure we can cover the Maine Coast Mall abatement that which is the next topic of discussion. The Maine Coast Mall abatement dollar figure is being contested, so we're working with the Maine Coast Mall's attorney as well as our attorney, just trying to get clarification as to what monies they're exactly entitled to. So the 14.5 assessed value is not in question. That what's in question is whether they're entitled to a refund of taxes that they didn't pay. So the question at hand is the Taco Bell and US Cellular, those two buildings, the Main Coast Mall doesn't pay the taxes on those buildings. So we can't, I don't even believe legally we can return money to them that they didn't pay. So, but their kind of sticking point is that the KFC building, the KFC property was listed on the list that their attorney prepared in the agreement. But our argument is, regardless of whether it's listed in the agreement or not, you didn't pay the taxes on that building, so we can't refund you taxes that you didn't pay. So that's where we're at. It's solely the KFC building. They didn't list the US Cellular building, which is odd because they listed one, but they didn't list the other. So we're trying to work through it anyway. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to come to some sort of agreement on it without it derailing the entire agreement, but I'm not entirely confident that that's the case. So that's where it is. It's with the attorneys to try to hammer out some sort of agreement. It may end up, that single issue may end up back with the arbitrator, possibly, or the whole, potentially the whole agreement could get scrapped. I don't know.
So question on that. So those three buildings, the let's just deal with KFC, that's assessed separate from the entire complex, and then the owners of KFC get billed directly for the taxes
Correct.
for that. The settlement agreement was on what was mandated by the state that we didn't appeal was that they came up with a valuation
Right.
for the whole thing or for each parcel.
For the whole property. But they're only taxed for the pad sites. They're not taxed for the actual buildings. So when Larry was calculating out what was owed based on what they paid compared to the 14.5 assessed value, what they paid, their assessed value, so if the whole property was assessed at $20 million, you have to take away the building value of KFC and the building value of US Cellular in order to calculate what they actually paid in taxes, because they don't pay taxes on those two buildings. So when he calculated what was owed returned to them, he took out those two buildings, the assessed value of those two buildings, so that lowered their total assessed value to 18 million. And then he calculated in, the 14.5, the difference between the 18 and the 14.5. So what they're arguing is that the KFC building should be included, even though they didn't pay taxes on that building. So
They don't own the building.
they don't own the building,
So they
correct?
own the land that's under it.
And they're getting a refund on the land underneath it.
Right.
Yes,
just not the
that's
building.
included in the
As the
14.5,
0.5,
Right.
right.
the assessed value of the 14.5. So
And why do they think that they should get, are they providing a reason?
the only reason we've gotten so far from their attorney is that it's because it's listed in the list of properties that they put in the agreement. But he wrote the agreement, and unfortunately, Larry or myself didn't pick up on the fact that KFC was listed on there. But
Doesn't matter if it's
it's
listed.
irrelevant of
Yeah.
whether it's listed or not, because really, the agreement isn't for the individual properties. The agreement isn't, okay, we're gonna reduce the evaluation on Governors, let's say, from, 5 million down to 4 million. That's not how it was done. The way it was done is the total assessed value of the Main Coast Mall property is reduced to 14.5 million. So logically, that would be the properties for which they pay taxes on. So,
Yeah, I mean-
and again, they didn't list the US Cellular building because they don't pay taxes on the US Cellular. Well, they don't pay taxes on KFC either, so. So in the end, in the end, there may be some sort of agreement. I'd hate to see the whole thing get scrapped. I mean, it's, the
Yeah.
reimbursement, you're talking probably, and I don't know the exact figures, but for KFC, you're probably talking maybe in the $60,000 range. So perhaps we can hammer out some sort of, agreement, but I'm opposed to refunding them money they didn't pay, so.
Well, they don't, and their name is not even on that listed as, so we really can't. I mean, I would be shocked if they would tell you, that would be like the city refunding me taxes for my
Somebody
neighbor's
else's
house.
property, yeah, absolutely.
And if I was Taco Bell, I'd be a little upset about that.
They made a mistake and added that to the list, but that was an error that,
You-
Right.
What's frustrating is that there was agreement, that it's pretty clear cut. Now we're spending money on attorneys.
yeah.
And and when we voted as a council, we voted in good faith, quickly.
We did.
We had a meeting
special
because they
meeting for them.
requested that they wanted the reimbursement, which made sense, and we wanted to support that. And now to be in this position seems like everything's shifting again. And so I would be interested in hearing more about this, because I think it's also up to the council again to take it up if we're gonna start dealing with this kind of pushback around property they don't pay taxes on, and it's not part of the whole settlement to begin with. I just question where this is headed, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, in the mediation, the mediator, in my opinion now, in hindsight, the mediator we shouldn't have left the mediation without a dollar figure, without a clear, clear calculation as to what the reimbursement was owed to the Main Coast Mall. That would obviously would have avoided all of this, because we could have worked with the mediator to settle it to some sort of agreement, where now we've got an agreement in place for 14.5 million assessed value, but now there's discrepancy as to what they're owed. And common sense says they're not owed it because they didn't pay it, but
Or they're not even owners of the building or the taxes. If anybody should get it back, it would be
KFC.
KFC.
But we can't, but
But we can't do that, I get it. 'cause
But
they're not part of the
KFC wouldn't be
14.5.
abated unless KFC requested an abatement, which they have not done, so.
I agree with Dale. I think that the sad thing about this is that we didn't do that because we were doing everything in good faith, and nobody, this is a pretty cut and dry process.
Should be.
It is. I mean, it is. And so to have someone come back after all of this and then make a claim like that is, I'm sorry, but I think it's a bit disheartening. That, the council did everything it could to push this through and end it, and trying to be understanding and.
And it's an agreement that goes forward, so.
Exactly.
And
Years, yeah.
unfortunately, if this falls apart, everything's gonna be tied back up again. And so it's gonna go through the slow process, the appeal will go forward. It's unfortunate, so.
Yeah, it is.
I hope that they will, take a hard look at that and realize that the process that they followed, that the city has followed, is the defined legal process that you go through when you have a disagreement about valuation. That was resolved. And so now it's just applying what the resolution was to what they've paid in. It's pretty straightforward. So.
Yeah, I think that the hard part about this is I think that people don't realize that paying taxes is not just a thing that's a whim. It is not something that people just decide what the taxes are going to be and how they're going to be collected and everything. There are rules and regulations that are statewide that have to be done, and it's done to protect the property owner, but also the taxpayers, because this could set a precedent of anyone that has property that they lease. They'll say, well, you overcharged my tenant, so I want the money back. It's a protective process. Yes, is it cumbersome? Absolutely, it can be, but it's a process that's created to protect everybody, not so that things aren't done on a whim and that decisions aren't made because, you feel really good about this person, but you don't, but I'm not going to do that for this person because I don't like them. I mean, this process is created for protection, and it shouldn't be abused. There's my soapbox. Sorry.
Well, again, I will certainly,
Mic drop, yeah.
I will certainly report back as we get any additional information, but we'll see where it goes.
Well, good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's probably it for me for financial stuff for the week.
Can't end on a high note, it's Friday.
You need to start with like the
Yeah.
bad stuff.
And then say, Christian Ridge is progressing. And actually, and again, I think I told you this before, but as a person that travels that road twice a day, every day, they are doing an excellent job of keeping that traffic going and really keeping the road into a safe position so that, you're not dodging things, you're not going into deep holes. They've done a really, I was dreading it, honestly,
Yeah.
and they've done a great job.
It looks good.
Right.
Yeah, it looks really good. They're doing great, so. All right, finance, you're up. Please smile.
Okay. Smile and good things.
Good things. Okay, so this week continues with organization of the capital projects files. So I took the files that Lisa left behind and put those together, and then now the various project managers and department heads are bringing me their files so that we can have one file and everything's in it. Part of why I'm doing that is because at the same time I'm doing a grants review for CFA reporting for 22 and for 23. And also I have reporting to do for the grants, which I'm learning as I go. So I'm having to keep track of where we are with the different projects in terms of our spend on them. That's a lot. And then we're still working on the fiscal year 22 audit. We're still pretty heavy in the cash receipting piece, trying to get that reconciled. So May, I don't even see May hardly. She comes in, she locks her door, and I hear yelling, and that's it. I've been working with Jim Safian and a couple of other people from DEP and the Bond Bank about the two SRF projects that are going on, so getting that process down and started working on those applications. I attended the meeting for Water Street Pump Station. That's the one that's going to be coming out for MBRC reimbursement billing. And then, again, I've been meeting with with Adam and Mike and Reggie about their individual projects and where we are. Lisa left me like a 4-page spreadsheet of all the projects that are going on for Public Works, and also anything kind of germane to the discussion of spend on any of their assets. So anything that's getting repaired, so there's repairs, capital improvements, and then there's maintenance. So I'm trying to get all those buckets separated out and keep the administrative piece of Public Works moving along smoothly. So I'm getting good support from the guys, so I feel like I'm on the right track with that. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now, and then working at the same time of pulling all the capital assets, getting a clearer picture of what's going on, and then working that into my long-term financial plan. And then just the daily operations of finance.
Yay.
I'm happy that we finally got the tax bills thing worked out, because it's stressful.
Yeah, it is a bit challenging. Especially, and most of the time, it's just the issue between the softwares talking to
Yeah.
each other, and you're like, why is this happening? And then you have to get support, and it's time consuming.
And Nate was out, and he had a catastrophe.
Oh, no. And he's like the trio
I
in
know.
Munis, or not Munis, but
King of software.
yeah, King of Software.
So I'm going to show my age, but it used to be, we printed our own tax bills on a very slow printer, and someone had to spend the night, either Frank or I, while those were printing overnight, because if it stopped, you were in a mess. So it was ridiculous. That was back when we used Northern Data.
Yeah, the first year I was here, we had Big Mama, it was this huge
Yeah, we had a huge printer that we did that, yeah.
And it took hours for those to run.
Thank God for technology.
I know, right?
Can you imagine?
But it's working.
Sleeping in the office because you couldn't leave the printer.
She said all that with a smile. You notice that?
Me? Who?
No,
Her?
Ian.
Yeah, she
Yes,
did, I know.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, yeah.
So, Ann, that's, you done? I don't wanna,
Yeah,
I don't wanna jump in if you're not.
not doing anything.
But I asked Scott to come this morning, the fire chief. He has an agenda item on the agenda for Monday night, dealing with the transport service, increasing our EMS capacity to begin transport. So I wanted him to provide some background information to you all before Monday night. So if you have any questions, we can perhaps get those out of the way. If you recall, well, actually, I don't think you two are on the council, but Dale, you may recall, when we came forward about purchasing the ambulance, there was a conversation around transport and the need to increase our license permissions. And so they've gone through that process, and in that conversation, the wish of the council is that once that licensing was received by the state, that the information be brought back here to the council so that the council would have a better understanding of what that obligates the city to going forward. And so that's really the gist of the agenda item for Monday night, just to bring the council up to speed with where we're at with the transport licensing, what the anticipated plan is for the extent of transport that we're going to do, some basic information about what's coming, what you'll see next month as far as ordinance for billing, and what the billing will look like for the city, and then finally, hopefully gaining the blessing of the council to allow the fire department to begin exercising that license and doing transports. So, Scott?
Like you just said all.
I don't know the details.
Just kind of the real quick clip notes of it. We went through the whole process that we were tasked with. Again, this goes back to, all the way back to prior to Michelle and Tammy being here, but when I was hired, we were tasked with moving forward with putting the ambulance service in place in possibility of future taking over our own city. We had some things transpire this winter that kind of expedited the process, and in February, we started looking for an ambulance. We went through the ambulance purchasing process with you all, purchased that ambulance in April. And during that period of time, I started working on a response plan so that we're not violating our contract or removing the contract with Northern Light. So we spent a lot of time working with Northern Light, developing a response plan on how Ellsworth would fit into the transport model without being committed to doing transports 100%, because we don't have the manpower to be able to get into the ambulance business full time. You would lose your workforce downstairs based on our call. We wouldn't have personnel standing by for fire service. So we went through this pretty extensive process. It took a long while to bring Northern Light around and explain how we were going to fit into the model. I talked with the state pretty heavily. The state was behind what we were doing. I sent them a copy of our response plan before we obtained signatures to see if we were missing anything. She said our plan was a very comprehensive, well laid out, easy to follow plan. And then once we received that back, we were able to get the signatures from Northern Light, took it across the street to RCC so that they could see how the response plan would work out and how Ellsworth would fit into transports. And then got their approval and then took it to our own dispatch with EPD and worked with them to make sure that we were all on the same page. Once all that was done, the state has granted us a transport license. We are now officially licensed as a transport service. We are not transporting yet because we don't have your approval. We also had our EMS license capability increased from just providing basic EMTs to now having permission for the ALS providers that work for us, being able to work up to the next level and provide that level of care on the street. That we can do now because we have inside our contract with Northern Light, we have an exchange process for supplies that we use that we have it replaced. So what we're using, we're getting replaced. There's a little bit of cost for other hard items, but for the most part, any of the equipment that we're using is being replaced. So that was an easy transition for us to do that level.
What did you call that level? LAS or ALS? What does that stand
Advanced
for?
life support.
Okay.
So State of Maine has 3 levels. They have basic EMT, they have advanced EMT, and then they have paramedic.
Okay.
Advanced EMTs and paramedics are considered advanced life support. The only difference is it's advanced EMTs can only give a couple of medications, where paramedics like myself and Doug can do the full gamut. So we've given ourselves permission. We're not obligated to provide it, but if we have it available, we can provide it now. So that takes a lot of pressure off the guys downstairs, and it doesn't obligate us to provide a level of service that we can't provide 100% of the time. So that has been granted to us. We've got a medical control physician that is signed on with us, which gives us a lot of oversight and also affords us some more training. He's very proactive, very fire EMS based as far as his mindset goes. So he's a huge asset to our service. So moving forward with that, our hopes is that on Monday you'll allow us to put out that we're going to be providing transport. Basically what that's going to consist of is Northern Light will do all the primary transports in the city of Ellsworth. There's no question about it. We're still under contract until next July. What Ellsworth will become is basically the mutual aid ambulance. Instead of Peninsula Ambulance or Schoodic or Bar Harbor coming into the city or Bucksport, Ellsworth will now be their first call when they don't have an ambulance inside the city of Ellsworth. We'll still be responding to all the calls. We've set some criteria in some of the nursing homes and stuff, but we'll still be responding to all these calls. The only difference is instead of my guys waiting 15, 20, 30 minutes for an ambulance, Northern Light doesn't have an ambulance. We'll be the ones doing the transport, which means now we'll only be on scene for 10 to 15 minutes and get this call completed in a reasonable amount of time instead of a citizen in Ellsworth spending a half hour waiting for an ambulance and then another 15 minutes going to the hospital and just delaying all that process. So that's how we've designed it. It's exactly for that. We've established our boundaries. We will not leave the city of Ellsworth. We are for emergency calls. We're not their mutual aid to go to Franklin and Hancock. We're not their mutual aid for them. They have their own system. We are for the city of Ellsworth and Fletcher's Landing only because we're contracted with Fletcher's Landing. That's it. The only one criteria we had is if there's a large-scale incident where we have a bus or something like that, where we need to be a part of that. It's just the way that the criteria for those things change. But we have made it very, very clear that the ambulance that's downstairs is for the city of Ellsworth and for the city of Ellsworth only. And I have been approached by other services in the area asking if we were to come out of town. And I've been very matter of fact with them, with the, no, not right now.
No.
No. So, again, we're the largest by territory, we're the largest. We just can't be all the way down to the peninsula and then have to go all the way out to Outer Bangor Road and be expected to cover that territory. It's just not possible.
And
So.
that's Northern Lights' responsibility.
Correct.
They contract with all those communities.
Right.
And we sat in that meeting, obviously, with the other service, and we made that clear, and they have now finally sat down at the table with each other and had some conversations. So, the one thing our ambulance does do is it alleviates that 75 calls a year that other service is coming into the community and have to provide. So, hopefully that frequency will reduce down to 25-30% less call for them coming into the city.
So one thing I just wanted to drill down a little deeper on, just, you may already understand it, but just so that I'm clear that you do. So we are licensed to basic transport. So being licensed to that, we're obligated to maintain that level of staffing, that level of capacity. We're permissioned up to advanced, which means if we have the staff that have the licensing, have the knowledge to be able to perform at that level, then we can. We don't have to, so we're not obligated, required under any licensing or anything to provide that level of care, but if we have the staff to do it, we can. So,
So moving forward, he alluded to next month, I worked with Ann and the city attorney, and we have a EMS billing ordinance that will be presented to you in September. It just basically how we're going to go through the process of billing for ambulance service and what the fee structure will be, being able to utilize a third-party billing service. Finance doesn't have time to do a billing service. So, we've done all that. It would have been on this council's agenda, however, the city attorney, he was one day too late for us getting it getting it out there for you all. At the same time, we've vetted out some billing vendors, and we have one contract that is sitting open, so when I come to you next month, it'll be for the public hearing for the city ordinance, and then also for approval for the city manager to sign the contract with billing service. It's an 8%, I believe I think it's a 6 or 8% of what they collect is what their fee structure is.
Is
So
that
we
pretty
don't-
common for that
Yes.
industry?
Yeah, so we won't be paying a flat rate for service or anything. What they collect is what they get in return, so it behooves them to collect money from us.
and I think you said, when we talked about it, Scott, I think you said we can back bill up to
Yeah.
90 days?
It's either 90 or 180 days we'll be able to move backwards. So even if we start transport on Monday, we don't get approval until
September.
September, September, we'll be able to move backwards, because that information will be sitting in the main EMS system, so the billing service will be able to go in, and once they're authorized to go in and collect that information and bill those. So we shouldn't be that far off on a billing schedule that requires us to be 6 months out back billing. What it also does provide additionally is if Northern Light provides an ambulance that is lower licensed than what we have for available service, if we put a member on that truck, we're able to rebill back to Northern Light for our personnel getting on their truck. So it behooves them to maintain their license level, maintain a higher level of care than what we're providing, because with permission, I will charge them for every time a personnel gets on their truck.
It's crazy. It's been going on for like 6 years, and we're finally kind of here. It's good.
I think we're about a year faster than what we wanted to be, but, at least we're stepping into it. I think we're stepping into it slowly, which is good. We may find that a year from now that we're still not there yet, but at least we have some capability, and we can, if what's working now helps bridge that gap, then we'll be able to continue to move forward and still prepare for what the future has for us. Because the call volume's not stopping. You see every month in my report that the call volume is it just keeps increasing. We average 100, we're averaging almost 200 calls a year increase every year since I've been here. So, and in 2018 they only ran 500 calls. So that's how fast your call volume is increasing. And there's nothing to do about it. Between tourists and population growth in the city itself, permanent residents, it's just going to exponentially continue to increase. And when we become a fully licensed service and no longer utilizing another contract, that call volume is just going to go even more.
So just, that would be one thing I would recommend to just give a brief history in terms of, just to remind the public in terms of where we started and
Yeah.
we have to respond that, for example, in the past we didn't respond. We have to respond with Northern Light. I'm assuming we're going to be transitioning or have transitioned from taking the big trucks to use,
Oh, yeah.
we're
Yeah, yeah.
using the ambulance. And
Yep.
so just that history will, I think it will be helpful to ground everybody to remind where we started in terms of what the calls used to be for the fire department and what they are now.
Oh,
They're dramatically different.
So that's where we're at, and I can share with you guys in advance what would be coming to you for next month.
All the ordinance.
Yeah, I got the ordinance and the contract here, just in case you guys all wanted it for you.
Lisa? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
All right, does anybody else have anything that they'd like to discuss? All right, I guess the meeting is done. Thank you.
We got one.
Oh, Ray, I'm sorry.
I would just note that your meeting 3 weeks ago, when it eventually got online, so I could look at it on YouTube, it didn't get on till, looking at it, it didn't get on till Thursday before the Friday for the next meeting. Because it said one day when it went on. And then I looked at it, and it said that it went for 3 hours. Then when I got around to listening to it, it was when the fire department was here and Matt was here, about Matt for Grant Fire Department for the exhaust system downstairs. And I listened to the first hour and 6 minutes, and then figured maybe I'd better go to the next week, and that was the week where you talked and you had the auditor here, and then I finally got back and I listened to it, and there was only about another 36 minutes, so what happens, what's on there, when I first saw 3 hours and 12 minutes, I said, what are these people doing for 3 hours and 12 minutes, and what are they up to? And I looked at it, and what someone had done, they just completely regurgitated the same one, because when it ended, you went out, came back in, and it just started over again, so it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
I can promise you, we will never sit here on a
No.
Friday morning. for
3 hours, absolutely.
We have, but
Yeah.
pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Steve Beacon was on the council when we started talking about